So let's just jump right into the workshop. Yay, we have the job interview. So first I want you to just take a couple minutes, pat yourself on the back, um, and congratulate yourself for getting the job interview. That means that you had a very effective resume and that the employer wants to learn more about you. So having said that, the truth of the matter is now the work begins. So you want to know how to prepare for an interview. We're going to talk about that. You want to know about the various types of interviews. A lot of times we think that an interview is going to be one way, and when we actually go, we end up getting shocked because it's different than what we were thinking it's going to be. We want you to learn today to know how to communicate your best image on the interview. We also want to talk a little bit about answering some of those key questions that you may have through the course of the interview, but then also you asking good questions as well at the end of the interview. We're going to teach you today how to know how to handle difficult situations and then also to know how to apply the STAR method. So I'm going to break that down for you. Um, we want you to know the post-interview steps. So after the interview's happened, that doesn't mean the interview is over. So we're going to discuss a little more about what those follow-up steps look like after the interview as well. Some of the things too that we're going to talk about is making sure that you are prepped for the interview. You know, my experience is I have been with the state of Minnesota for it's actually 4.5 years now. And previous to that, I was the operations manager of a nonprofit. And during that time, I've done a lot of interviewing, a lot of hiring, um, a lot of prepping people for interviews. And what I found interesting was that oftentimes when I would be doing an interview, somebody would say to me, "What do you do here?" And this was actually a very well-known nonprofit. So before you go to that interview, please take some time and do a little bit of research on the employer and on what the job is. Know the skills that they are looking for instead of the skills that you think would be a good fit. I want you to use the same terms that they're using when they're asking for something in the job description. Even though you may have called it something else at a different position, you use the terms that the company is using for the position. And then we're going to talk about how important it is for you to look good. Okay. There are many, many different types of interviews, and this is changing all the time also because of the pandemic. So, we think a lot of times if you're going to have an interview that's just going to be me and you, I'm going to be interviewing you, but we're finding that that simply isn't true anymore. So you can have a telephone interview, which a lot of times that could be very short and to the point. They call it telephone screening so that they're actually going to have a conversation with you and see if you can go on to the next step, which would be an in-person interview. Um, Another type of interview that they will do too is the virtual interview. So when when an employer is calling you to come in for an interview, it's very, very important that you can go into a private room, whether it be the bathroom, your office, the bedroom, close the door. A lot of times due to the um, situation we have in our lifestyle right now, a lot of times kids are not going to school. They may be yelling in the background. You might have the TV turned up loud. The important point is to remember to have a pen and a piece of paper and try your best to go into a room where you can actually focus on this phone call. Your interview is starting right now as soon as you get that phone call to come in for the interview. Interviewer could be listening to what's going on in the background. So it's important for you to be ready for that interview and take notes. Um, there is the interview called the selection interview, which that could be multiple interviews, and you may meet multiple people, okay? Usually during the selection interview, what they're doing is they're evaluating your skills and your ability to fit in to the organization. There's the behavioral interview, which provides more information about your on-the-job behavior. Um, it can also be a stopping point or a point of contact where the employer is trying to get a better idea of your personality, of your character. The questions typically tend to address how are you going to handle a stress work-related situation. Um, Then there's also the work sample, which that could be done in a couple different ways. So I have worked with gentlemen who and women who were going to be welders, so they would have to do a work sample of their welding. Another name that they would call that is a stress sample. So the person who was being interviewed would do a weld, and then they would pick that weld up and they would take it over to the x-ray machine, see if there were any air bubbles in it, and then they would put stress on it, meaning apply some weight to it and see if the weld would hold or not. So that's called the work sample. And then another type of interview is the peer or the group interview. And what that is that gives you the opportunity to meet and talk with other coworkers, and it's a part of the company's way of determining whether or not you're going to fit in. Now, it's important to remember that when you are, if you're doing a peer group, let me give you an example. Okay, so say that you went in for the interview, it went really well. The interviewer said, you know what, I would like to have you walk around the factory with these two people who are my employees, and they will give you a tour. When you are touring the factory with these two employees, please be aware that after the tour is done, I am more than likely going to ask my employees, well, what did you think of this person? Do you think that they would be a good fit? Something else that I want you to know is that when I advocate for you to get jobs with employers, one of the pieces that I always ask is, what is the most important thing to you in an employee? So when you're hiring something, what's the most important thing to you? Now, it's easy for us to assume that it would be, well, your skills or that you can do the job. But what every single employer has said to me in one form or the other is the most important thing is whether or not you're going to fit in. So always remember that. Um, I'd like Sheila to have ask a question out there, and it's a yes or no question. But my question to you is have you worked with a difficult person in the past at your previous jobs? So just put yes or no, okay? And Sheila, I'm just going to have you kind of keep an eye on what everybody's answering, okay? When you're going into the interview, of course, you're going to communicate your best image. So you want to be able to show and send good signals. We're going to talk about what that means in regards to body language. You want to be able to finish strong, and you want to be able to follow up. Okay. Sheila, I'm going to stop here a moment and just see if you have any questions so far and see what the chat is saying.
No questions have come in,
Okay.
but the consensus is yes, everybody has worked with a difficult person.
Isn't that something? Did anybody say no? I'm just curious.
There are no no's.
Okay. Isn't that powerful, you guys? So I want you to think about that for a second. And when I do this workshop, almost every time I do it, I ask that, has anybody worked with difficult people? Typically, everyone says yes, and it's very, very rare that I have somebody say no. So having said that, that also reinforces how important this is to employers. They want somebody who's going to come in and not only do a good job, but get along with others too. I've had employers actually tell me in one form or the other, they said, you know, Gloria, I can teach the person the job and I can teach them the skills on how to do the job, but I can't teach them how to be nice. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. During the interview, you have every right to say, you know, I get along well with others and I'm flexible. What I have found too is that most people are set in their ways and they hate change. So a lot of people, especially due to the changes that we're being forced to do because of the pandemic, a lot of people will say, that's not the way I was taught, or that's not the way I do it, or that's not my job description. So please don't give that impression during the interview, and please don't be that type of employee. It's important when you're at the interview that you say, I get along well with others. I'm willing to do the job the way you want me to do it. I believe I can make you a lot of money, and in turn, I'll make some money too. What I found when I was interviewing is most times people would come in with the attitude, what are you going to do for me? Meaning, what's the pay? Do I get benefits? What's my vacation package look like? These are true statements that I actually had people say. Could I get $100 advance? Do you think I could get a gas card? When's payday? I haven't even hired the person. Okay, so that's how you're also going to be a step above everybody else, is that you're going to go in, you're going to know the company and you're going to know what they're looking for, and you're going to be the perfect person for the job. You are going to be the fit for exactly what they're looking for. Okay, now we're going to get into some of the tough questions that employers will ask during the interview, and just know this ahead of time that if you really want that job, you're going to be nervous. That is just the way it is. Okay, and there's nothing wrong with that. When I was taught to be an interviewer, oftentimes people would be nervous, and I was fine if they said to me, you know, I'm a little nervous. I really want this job. That would be impressive to me actually, because they are showing that they're honest, and they're also not scared to admit that they're vulnerable. Okay. When you are asked a tough question, one of the methods that I really like, this one, is called the sandwich method. So it takes a positive situation, a negative situation, and then wraps it into a positive situation. So let me give you an example. This is true about me. When I interviewed for this position, one of the question is, what is your greatest weakness? Know that that's a very common question. Uh, when I would interview at my previous job, we would be given the same questions we would ask everybody, but this question was always on there. Please don't say I don't have any weaknesses. That is your weakness, okay? We all have weaknesses and none of us are perfect, but what you want to do is talk about your weakness, own it, acknowledge it, but then turn it back into a positive. So for me, my weakness is Excel, okay? It's not my best gift and I don't really like it, okay? But in my position, I have to do spreadsheets and I have to do reporting, and it's part of our pay sources, so it needs to be done, okay? So at the interview, when I interviewed for this job, they said, what is your greatest weakness? I said, well, my greatest weakness is Excel, but I want to let you know that I'm willing to take a refresher course before my first day of employment. I got the job, okay? So again, it's admit that you have the weakness, know what it is ahead of time so that you can talk confidently about it. And that way it doesn't catch you off guard and you don't say something like, I don't have any, okay? Um, when you are talking about it, it's important to be honest and brief, okay? A lot of times when I would talk with people, I would ask them what's their greatest weakness. It would almost get into be a counseling session, because 2 hours later, they're still telling me about their greatest weakness and they don't have a clue what they're going to do about it, okay? So just keep it brief. Another nice thing about the career force is that we as job counselors can offer you mock interviewing, and we can practice this stuff with you too, okay? So again, it's a positive statement followed by a negative situation, ending with a positive statement focused on your best skills, okay, and the skills that the employer is looking for. Um, some of these questions are, tell me about your worst boss, okay? I'm not going to get into breaking all the answers down. I would be more than willing to do that. If you do have a specific question, feel free to put it in the chat. When you are talking about your worst boss, this is another question that is very common. Sometimes they'll say, tell me about your best and worst boss, or tell me about your worst boss. Never under any circumstances do you ever say anything negative about your worst boss, okay? Even though the person might have been your worst boss, I want you to still keep it positive. So how you could say it is that, well, you know, when you ask me about my worst boss, I would have to say that my best boss and worst boss were the same person. And what I mean by that is that they would be my best boss when I was really clear on what they wanted me to do, but he'd be my worst boss if I wasn't clear and just kind of tried to figure out what he wanted me to do. So I found out it worked best if I could go and ask him if I had questions about the task, ask him to explain more, and he was happy to do that. Okay, so do you see how you took that into something negative instead of saying he was the worst boss and start cutting the company down? One thing I always want you to remember is that these companies out there have worked very, very hard to obtain and gain their reputation. They're not willing to sacrifice it, okay? If you are sitting there and you're cutting down the previous boss, even though the person was not a good boss, but you're cutting them down, the company that you're interviewing for looks at you like, my goodness, if you're going to say those things about them, what would you say about us if we don't work out? And it's easy for them to say, nope, I'm going to move on to somebody else just based on that. Now, again, remember, this has nothing to do with the fact that you can't do the job. Okay. So always keep your attitude in check. The next tool that we have out there is called the STAR. And I love these acronyms because what they can do is they can actually give you some promptings when you're at the interview. Because again, if you really want that job, it's easy to forget your name. Okay. So we are happy to practice this type of stuff with you too before you go in for the interview so that you're feeling very comfortable and very confident. But the situation, so you want to provide an example of a situation that you were involved in that had a positive outcome. So, for instance, you could say something like, the task that I was given was to talk to 100 people and find out what type of dog they had. Okay. So after I talked to the 100 people, I found out that I could only get a hold of 80% of them, but out of 80% of them, 10% of them had so-and-so dog. But do you see how I'm really breaking this down? Okay. But you also want to keep it in a positive. So what I mean by that is you want to say, after I called all those people, I was able to sell them a better dog food. And I was able to sell so many, again, you want to give your percentages and give your numbers, but you want to be prepared. That is the key, is that you want to think of a situation. What was the task that you actually did? What action did you take to end up getting the result that the employer wanted? Okay. It's also important for you to say, the employer asked me to do it this way, so I made sure that it was done the way the employer wanted. Sheila, I'm just going to stop here for a minute and see if we have any questions so far.
We just had one earlier. Once, are you going to be talking about what kind of attire to wear for an
Yes.
interview?
Yes, I will
Okay,
just
so
touch base.
we'll address that. Okay, we'll address
Yes.
that later. Otherwise, no other questions at this time.
Okay, wonderful. So we'll keep moving on. Okay, now these are some of the key interview questions that are asked. And again, now typically what happens at an interview is that the interviewer will ask the same questions to everyone. Now, that's not like the golden rule, meaning that it is set in stone, but typically that's what happens. It gives everybody the same playing field and the same opportunity. Okay. Now, usually the very first question that they're going to ask you is, tell me about yourself. Now, here's the thing. These are called open-ended questions, and we as interviewers are taught to ask you, tell me about yourself, and then we're taught to put zippers on our lips, okay? We're taught to keep our mouth shut and let you go ahead and talk. Now, the thing is that I can't legally ask you your family status, meaning do you have children? Are you married? What is your religion? What is your sexual preference? I can't ask you any of that stuff at the interview, but it's not illegal if you tell me. So when I ask you, tell me about yourself, here's the types of things you will say to me. Well, I was born in so and so, and I've been married for this many years, and I have that many children. Or you'll say something to me like, well, I'm a single parent, and I just need to let you know my family comes first. No, the deal is that I really hope that your family does come first, because really that's the appropriate thing, is our family should come first, okay? But you don't speak about that at the interview. Here's what happens. Keep the children out of the interview. Okay. I've had people argue with me before and say, well, how do you know they aren't going to be happy that I have children? Looks like I'm rooted, I'm grounded, I'm not going anywhere, I have mouths to feed. And my response is, isn't that wonderful? Wouldn't we all like to think everybody's going to feel that way and respond that way? Truth is, how do you know they aren't saying, great, you got kids? No, you're going to be calling in sick all the time. You're going to be bringing all those snotty nose diseases that kids have. Your daycare is going to blow up on you. Nope, I'm not going to hire you. No, they aren't going to tell you that's not the reason they're hiring you, but they'll tell you stuff like, well, I think you're overqualified. Okay. The key is keep the children, keep the spouse, um, keep your religion, keep all those out of the interview. They have no place belonging in the interview, and it could deter the employer from hiring you. because you don't know where the employer stands, okay? Why are you interested in working for this company? That gets back to that question about please do a little bit of research, okay? And again, I had somebody say right at the interview, what do you guys do here? Okay. When you're answering why you're interested in working for this company, that is the time to build the company up, okay? I always say that you can say to the interviewer, you know what? I want to be working for this company because I know you guys make a great product and I want to be a part of that. Okay, or I know that build the company up. Don't say, well, I'm here for the money. Okay, the truth of the matter is that we all work for money. That's why we work. Okay, if you love your job, that's a bonus. But when you are discussing anything at the interview, keep the money, keep the wage, keep the benefits, the vacation time, all of that out of the interview. Wait until you get the job. Okay, then you can find out more information about it. Sheila, I'm going to have you put in the chat the Career One Stop resource for them. I want to let you guys know that when you are applying for some of these jobs, but you have no idea what their pay is, I want you to use Career One Stop. You can go on that website and put in the company's name and they will give you a pay range, okay? Again, you're going to have an answer for what is your major weakness. Another one is what are some of your strengths or what is one of your strengths, okay? So one thing that I find really fascinating is when I would sit down and interview people, I would ask, what is one of your strengths? And they would give me an answer where, well, I can't do this and I can't do that and I can't do this and I can't do that. But none of them were their strengths. We as human beings have a problem in regards to we can tell you everything we can't do and everything that's wrong with us, but we really struggle with talking about our strengths, talking about the things that we can bring to the table to make someone else some money. And I believe the reason for that is because when I walk up to you, I don't say to you, hi, my name's Glory Mitchell, which by the way, Sheila, I'm going to have you put that in the chat too, because it says I'm Art Larson. I'm not, I'm Glory Mitchell. Okay. But I don't walk up to you and say, hi, my name's Glory Mitchell. And by the way, I'm dependable, woman of my word, punctual, and I'll do the job to the best of my ability and walk away. You would say, yeah, you're a Fruit Loop too. Okay. But at the interview is when you need to talk that way. Okay. So you need to start to practice and start to pull out what your skills are. Because for some reason, we can talk about the things that we are not, but the things that we are, we struggle with. Okay. Um, give, can you give an example of how you solved a problem and what did you actually do? Okay. This is another great question that gives you the opportunity to go in and really customize your answer and talk about some of those improvements that you made on the job. Talk about if you increased sales, or talk about if you had some new ideas, or talk about if you were a team player, or you did a group project. Um, those are the types of stories that the employers want to hear because that's something that you can actually wrap your mind around. Okay. I always say that you are the director of the story in my head. So you are the director of the story in the interviewer's head. So if you can make it so that I can actually follow you from the beginning of the example all the way to the end and showing how you did make a huge improvement, I'm going to remember that too when it comes to times where I'm sitting down trying to decide which person is the best person for the job. Okay. This last one is where do you see yourself in 3 years? So they will form it to you that way. They might say, where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years? Or they might say, what are your career aspirations? Okay. Basically, what they are asking you is, are you going to be here in 3 to 5 years? Okay. What I want your answer to be is that, well, where do I see myself in 3 years? Well, I'm going to be working here for you, and hopefully I will have gotten a promotion. No, the truth of the matter is that we're really only guaranteed today, right? None of us know where we're going to be in 3 years. But again, when you are interviewing, you are going to let them know that you're going to be there as long as you humanly possibly can be. Okay. And you want to say, and hopefully I will have gotten a promotion, showing that you intend on growing within the company as well. Okay. The employer does not want to put all of this time and effort into training you, teaching you the position, giving you the education for the product, for whatever they are actually doing or making, and then know that you're going to go down the street in 3 to 5 years and maybe compete with the company, maybe give away some of their trademarks. There's all kinds of different things that they're not willing to have you come to the table and offer you a position if you're not willing to stay. Okay. So again, make sure that you are letting the person know that you're going to be with them and hopefully will have gotten a promotion. Okay. So interview practices.
Glory,
Yes.
Glory, can you take a couple questions?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So you were talking about the interview questions and tell me about yourself. Someone would like to know, do you bring up health issues during the interview?
Great, great question. No, you do not bring up health issues. The key is to first get the job. Then you can talk more about health issues. I also want people to be aware that if you have health issues where you can't do the job, so let me give you an example. Say that in the job description it says required to stand on your feet for 8 hours, okay? But you can't do that. Then I would like for you to get a hold of the career force and talk with our vocational rehab counselors because they are trained and experts in this area in regards to if you need accommodations. Some of the jobs too, they're just going to tell you flat out that if you can't stand for 8 hours, that's part of the job requirement. We're not going to have you apply for that specific job, but you can apply for a different job in the same company. Okay. But again, I would reach out to our vocational rehab counselors and have more of a conversation with them.
Okay, thank you. And we have another question. We have a 60-year-old person that lost their job after 33 years and is feeling overwhelmed, hasn't been in the job market for years. How do you become confident?
Yes, you know what? There are so many, many people that are in your exact situation. So for starters, I'm sorry that you're having to experience this, but I have great news. One of the things that we're finding with the employers is that they're looking for you, okay? Someone who is, we call it seasoned, someone who is experienced, somebody who can come in and do the job and it doesn't need to be glorified babysitting, okay? Someone who is also willing to come in and work with um, young people who do not know the job, but work closely with them and help them to learn the job. One of the things I want to encourage you to do is to attend our class that is Job Search Over 50. So take a look at that one. The second thing I'd like for you to attend is our resume class, because in the resume class, it talks about how you only go back 10 years. Now, I caught that Sheila said that you had worked for a job for 33 years. Congratulations, that's awesome. You do not want to have that on your resume. Now, I've had people get very upset because they're like, look, I worked really hard to for 33 years to get all this stuff on my resume. Now you're telling me I can't put it on there? You can put the skills on there, but yeah, straight up, that's what I'm telling you is you're not going to put 33 years of experience on your resume. Okay, you're going to put 10 plus years experience on your resume, and you're only going back 10 years. The reason for that is because you may be ruled out if you put 33 years on there. So let's, do a little bit of math. 33 plus, we're just going to guess and figure you started at 20. You're probably around 53 years old, okay? We don't know how the employer stands. Age discrimination is illegal, yet it happens all the time, okay? So you don't know if the employer wants an older person, wants a younger person, wants a middle-aged person. You don't know, and they're not going to tell you. Okay, but the key is to have your resume present yourself to where the employer is interested in learning more about you. Now, obviously, when you get to the interview, they're going to find out that you're not 23 years old, okay? But now the difference is that you're a real live person. Now you can have a conversation with the interviewer about how you're going to be a great fit for this company. Um, Also, it's say that you're 62 years old and you plan on retiring in a couple years. Keep that out of the interview, okay? I've talked to many, many people throughout life who have said that they're going to retire at a certain age and they don't end up doing it. Okay. So when you're at the interview, I also, again, because we're only guaranteed today, I want you to have a conversation and just, I call it putting the elephant in the room right front and center on the table and have a conversation about, I need to let you know that I don't have any plans of retiring anytime soon. If you would give me the opportunity to come in and work for you, I know that I can make you a lot of money, and in turn, I could make some money too. I think that we'd be a very great fit if you would just give me the opportunity to come and actually prove that to you. Okay. Now, I also want to point out that when you are interviewing, if you are doing a Zoom interview, a virtual interview, you're doing Teams, whatever your platform is, a lot of times you can do it right on your iPhone. You need to treat the camera as if it is a person that you're talking to, because it is. Okay. It's important for you to carry good eye contact, make sure that you're looking directly into the camera. Um, make sure that you're not fidgeting or that you're looking away. When I do this workshop, I have two screens in front of me, so I have to be careful so that I'm not looking at this screen and answering, because it looks disrespectful, and that's certainly not what I mean to be presenting. But again, you want to be aware of how you're actually looking. Another great thing that we can do here at the Career Force, and I've done this several times now, is I can practice with you interviewing through Teams or Zoom, whatever platform they're going to use. I'd be happy to call you, and you and I can practice right over the computer or your iPhone or your phone, and I can give you some insight on what you should look like, what you should wear. Okay. Before I get any further off on that, I want to talk about what do you wear when you're actually doing a virtual interview. And this pertains to just your regular interview too, okay? Regular meaning you're going to go in person. So for starters, it's important that when you are wearing, for ladies, you don't want to wear anything that is too flashy, okay? You don't want to wear anything that's low cut, obviously. When you're actually interviewing too, you want to make sure that you don't have necessarily a lot of jewelry. When you're going in person, this is just getting more and more important all the time. It's important that you don't wear cologne or that you don't wear perfume. I have interviewed somebody before who they had on a great big flashy scarf, and it kind of covered their mouth accidentally when she was turning her head. I wouldn't recommend that you wear a scarf. If you look behind me, I have a bunch of horses on my wall. I would never interview with the horses behind me, because that can be distracting to the interviewer. You want the interviewer to be paying attention to you and basically only you. Okay. When you're also doing virtual interviews, there's different backgrounds that you can pick. We don't recommend that you get into anything too wild and crazy. Okay. It can make you look like you're on a beach for an interview. That's not appropriate. Even though, unless you're actually going to be like a travel agent, maybe it would be appropriate then. But I'm just saying, think about this stuff, because the employer is thinking about it and judging you because of it. Okay, so just be more aware of that. Another thing that I want to point out is that I want you to be ready for the interview. So what we say is, let's say that you are going to go interview for a landscaping job. Okay. What we say is that we want you to dress one step above what the job entails. So I'm using a landscaper because I think that's a great visual. So when I see a landscaper, oftentimes they'll have a hard hat on, they might have safety glasses on, they might have a long sleeve shirt on with a safety vest over it. They typically have jeans on and steel toe boots, okay? So the question is, do you wear that to the interview? Do you walk in with all this garb on? The answer is no. What I want you to do if you're interviewing for a landscaper is dress one step above what the landscaper wears. So let's break that down. You don't wear a hard hat, okay, but your hair is clean and nicely combed, okay? You don't need to wear safety glasses, but your face is clean and your teeth are brushed, okay? I always recommend that men wear long sleeve shirts, even a button down long sleeve shirt. Women, you don't have to wear a long sleeve shirt necessarily, but the key is to make sure that nothing is falling out, okay? It used to be that, we used to wear dresses and suits. That's not the case anymore. Again, keep this in mind. And if you have questions about what you should be wearing, you can feel free to call us at the Career Force too. We can give you more information on that. But back to the landscaper for pants, if he only has a pair of jeans, which let's get real, a lot of people have been out of work for a long time. They don't have a lot of money anymore, okay, to go out and buy brand new clothes to go to the interview. If he only has jeans, I always recommend that you press the jeans and have a nice stiff crease going down the center. Okay. Ideally, it'd be great to wear khakis or blues to the interview. Okay. Men are judged by their shoes, and women are judged by their whole appearance. I don't make this stuff up. Okay. So make sure that if you are a man, that you have shoes on that look pretty good. I don't recommend that you go in there with brand new steel toe boots. I always say kick the curb a little bit and get them scuffed up a little bit. But again, it's one step above, okay? Another thing I want to point out to you is that if you don't have interview clothes, I want you to reach out to, there's plenty of nonprofits in the area that can help you. So Salvation Army is one of them, Goodwill, Easter Seals. I know that if you reach out to them and say, I would like to come down to the store and pick out a couple of interview uniforms, could you help me pay for that? Typically, they'll give you a voucher, okay? There are also programs out there that, let's say that you do get hired and you need to have some equipment by next week, you're starting Monday, reach out to your local career force because many of us have partners that can help you with possibly buying some equipment. I'm not talking thousands of dollars, but if you needed a hammer and, some odds and ends, steel toe boots, different things like that in order to start the job, accept the job, and get a hold of us and let us help you to make sure you've got the supplies that you need to keep that job. Okay. Something else that I think is really interesting about interviews is that, when I used to do this workshop, I would always say, give them a firm handshake. So you'll see in this picture that they're giving a firm handshake. Our society has changed so much. First off, we don't even sit that close to each other anymore in the picture. Okay. And many, many people do not want to give a handshake anymore. So I want you to be very aware of that and to be cognizant of it. So what I mean by that is that I will shake somebody's hand if they put their hand out to me, okay? But otherwise I don't anymore. Whereas I used to give a firm handshake pretty much to everyone that I ran into, okay? Sheila, I'm going to stop here for a minute and see if you have any more questions.
Oh, we have lots of questions, Glory.
All right.
Let me go back up a little bit in the chat so I can start.
Yes.
Okay. This one's probably relevant to a lot of people. How do we answer questions about salary? Do we tell them what we were making? Do we tell them that we expect to be paid a market wage and then inquire as to what they see as the market wage?
Oh, boy, that is excellent questions. Here's the thing. Now, again, remember I said earlier that we all work for money, okay? But man, it is really a sensitive subject, especially when you're at the interview. So typically what happens is that when you are actually at the interview, they aren't discussing money with you at all. But let's say that they are, okay? What I want you to do is, again, you've done your research. So you've gone on Career One Stop and you check to see what the pay range is. Now, I'm just making this up, okay? So let's say that I wanted to work at McDonald's, which this is actually true I'm located in the city of Duluth. And in Duluth, if you work on the west end at McDonald's, their pay range is lower than working on the east end doing the same job. I don't understand why that is, but it's the truth, okay? So let's say I wanted to work at McDonald's. I go on Career One Stop. I look on the east end and the pay range is $16 to $18 an hour. What do I ask when it says in the pay salary desired on the application that I'm filling out for McDonald's? I have to put numbers in there. Okay, I can't put, it used to be where we could put maybe to be determined or talked about later, or put in letters. You have to put numbers in. Okay, so if the pay range is $16 to $18 plus I have restaurant experience, okay, Typically, we would think, well, you're going to go for the gusto glory. You're going to say you need $18 an hour. Okay. Pay range 16 to 18. I got experience, 18 bucks. But the deal is that's what everybody does. Okay. So what I want you to do is if the pay range is 16 to 18, I want you to go right in the middle, 17. Okay. If you are going and interviewing for a company, you have no idea what the pay is, you're going to check with Career One Stop before you even go in there. I also recommend people check with Career One Stop before you even apply. So on our Minnesota Works job bank, which Sheila, I'd like for you to, I know everybody has Minnesota Works, but I'm just going to have you put it in there one more time in the chat, just minnesotaworks.net. When you go on that website, we encourage all employers to put their pay range or pay salary or hourly. So it's hourly, yearly, monthly pay range, pay what their starting pay is. And what I always tell people is that if they have not put their salary in the job description anywhere, typically you're going to have to assume they probably aren't paying very good. Because I want you to think about this for a moment. If I'm an employer and I'm starting out my employees at 25 bucks an hour, full benefits, you're working Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30, why would I not want to put that on my job description? I'm very proud of that. Okay. I pay my employees good and I have great hours and great benefits. So why would I not want to advertise that as well? So again, use that as kind of an inside scoop. Okay. Did you have
Would you
another
like
one?
to take another question?
Sure.
Okay. So what if you are doing a career change and you are asked how you solved a problem in your past career? How would you answer?
I would be as truthful as possible and talk about that past career. No, the thing is the employer is going to know you're doing a career change based off of your resume. So you don't have to be embarrassed about that or feel shame. Instead, you hold your head up high and be proud of the problem solving skills that you did at the previous job, even though this new job is something completely different. You know, some of those skills, we call them transferable skills, and they transfer no matter what you're doing. So it could be, for instance, I always have on my resume, I practice the golden rule. Now, a lot of people don't know what that means. So I put on there, I practice the golden rule where I treat people the way I would want to be treated. Okay. So you can go ahead and give your examples of how you solve problems. The key is to have something prepared ahead of time in your mind to answer that question. Because what happens with us when we're nervous, we're excited about the job, we're having a hard time remembering our first name because we want the job so bad. It's easy then to stutter when you're talking because your mind is just scrambling like, oh boy, I wonder what I should answer here. If you practice ahead of time, it free flows and you're more believable. Okay. We're taught as interviewers to read your body language. Now, again, a lot of this changes because of your formatting, meaning how are you doing the interview? If you're doing it through Teams, my body language needs to be, Teams would be through video. Okay. My body language needs to be where I'm still carrying good eye contact with the camera. I'm not moving my hands around. I'm doing my best to sit calmly and answer the questions as best to my ability as I can. Okay, but again, I'm taught as an interviewer to read your body language, and if you don't know that, how are you supposed to conquer that? Okay. Sheila, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I think you did a good job answering that, Glory.
Okay.
You have time for another one?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay. This one's probably relevant to a lot of the participants that are on. If the job posting gives you a list of disabilities and asks you to check which apply to you, should you answer?
Oh boy. To be honest with you, I hate it when they do that. Yes. The Sheila, would you tell me what your opinion on this one is? Because I just have such mixed feelings because it's a catch-22. Are they asking, why are they asking that? And they don't tell you.
Right, and I'm assuming this is on a job application.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And some of those questions are illegal to ask, on the onset of the process, such as an application. Usually they can ask those questions after they offer the job to you.
Yes.
It,
So,
it's difficult though when it is on an application, is it going to affect you negatively if you don't respond? So it's kind of a catch-22. You kind of have to decide what you think is going to be beneficial for you at the time.
yes, and it is such a catch-22 because what they can do if you were to say, no, I don't have disabilities, and you do, that's considered lying. So they could possibly fire you for that later on down the road. Um, I guess what I want to throw out there too is that let's make this an individual situation. So when in doubt, call us at the career force, okay? We can help you answer that question, but I think that's going to be more of an individual question instead of a blanket question or blanket answer. The blanket answers, you always want to be truthful, okay? But again, I believe that we can kind of drill down more into this on an individual basis if you just reach out to us at the career force. We can also tell you which questions are illegal. Okay? I think let's take one more, Sheila.
Okay, let me see. Here's one. It says you interview with 2 employees at a company via Zoom. They then ask you to come in person to meet with them. What types of questions might they ask if you have already met with both of them prior?
Boy, that's a great question. So one of the things that, I'll be sending you in the email is the questions that we just kind of touched base on. Those are the most common questions asked in an interview. And if you can master those questions, you can master any interview. So typically what happens is that they'll ask you at the first initial interview, they aren't really getting into drilling down into tell me about a problem that you may have solved. They will might say, tell me a little bit about yourself, but then they're going to reword it and say, Glory, thank you for coming in to interview today. Could you tell us a little bit more about yourself? Okay. I know that you told us that you had did ABC. Could you tell us more? Um, so really how I want you to look at it is that second interview is going to be going into more depth than the first interview did. And it's just going to give you an opportunity to tell them um, about more of your skills, or if you say, well, I've told them everything, just repeat it. Okay. A lot of times when they're doing the second and third interview, they're checking to see if you're consistent or not on the information that you gave them. And so I know it's kind of hard to remember what you said at the interview, but you have a good idea. Okay. And the key is just to practice and repractice what you said and what they're looking for. Okay. Do you
And
have
the
anything you want to add,
in-person,
Sheila?
yeah, the in-person interview may be giving them the opportunity to introduce you to others within the company and
Mm,
maybe have some additional people sit in on the interview as well.
yes. Great advice, Sheila. Good. Okay, Sheila, I'm gonna have you pick out one more, but I'll do the last slide and then you can ask the last question. Okay. So post-interview steps, these are steps that I really want to encourage you to do after the interview is over. So first off, though, I want you to do this part before. It says contact your references, recap the interview, highlight points you want them to discuss. Here is what I do with my references. So first off, I get permission from them. Please get permission from them. There's nothing worse than when I call your reference and they say, they said you could use me for a reference. I'm not giving them a reference and hang up on me. I've had that happen. Please don't use your mother as a reference. She cannot maintain. She'll say stuff to me like, well, Billy's a good boy. If you could just give him a job, he could move out and everything would be so much better. That's the same way as saying, let me take on your problem. Okay. Um, so contact your references. I also give them a copy of the job description that I applied for. And in addition to that, I take my yellow highlighter and I highlight all of the things, the skills, not just things, but skills on that job description that I know how to do. I want you to think about this for a moment. If you can barely tell me what your skills are, how in the world are you going to expect your reference to know what your skills are? Okay. When I've done that in the past, I've had my references say, "She's Gloria, I didn't even know you knew how to do all these things." Okay. Then what this is saying too is after the interview, contact your references and tell them, this is, I got an interview. This is how it went. This is what I told them. They asked me these questions. Okay, just kind of give them a recap of how the interview went. Your references like to hear this follow-up anyways, typically. Okay. Then this is another really, really, really important piece. And this is how you stand out compared to the other people that they've interviewed. Okay. Send a thank you note. Now that thank you note can go through email. Okay, it can also, what I do is, but this is maybe because of my era, I like still getting things that I can hold or that I can use in handwriting because hardly anybody does it anymore. So let's say that I go into the interview and I have 5 people interview me. This could happen to you, okay? First off, I want you to know that if they introduce themselves to as Mrs. Johnson, that's how you're going to refer to them in the thank you note is Mrs. Johnson. If they introduce themselves to you by using their first name, saying, "Hi, my name is Sally," then that's how you can refer to them in the thank you note is Dear Sally, okay? Now, with 5 people, it's hard to remember their names, right? Again, you're having a hard time remembering your name. You want the job, okay? So one of the ways you can combat that is you can ask them for their business cards. Another way that you can do it is if you are doing a virtual interview, there's no reason that you can't have a mellow yellow piece of notebook here and jot down notes as we are talking. So I'm going to do my best to write down those 5 people's names. Okay. Now, if email is the only way that I can send the thank you note, I'm sending it immediately after the interview is done. But if you are going in person, what I recommend is that you go to the dollar store and you buy a thank you card. You can get whatever you want. If it says something on the inside or not, that's your choice. Okay, but what I get is I get a big thank you card. And when I open it up, it says thank you on the front of it, but it's blank on the inside. So on the left side, I write my email and my phone number, okay? And on the right side, I say thank you, and then I have all their names of whoever interviewed me. Thank you for the interview for the position. Okay, I write the title of the position. I look forward to hearing from you. Sincerely, Glory Mitchell. Okay. Sometimes just that thank you can push them over the edge where they're like, I don't know, I want to hire either this person or Glory. I'm having a hard time deciding. If they got that thank you card, sometimes that would make the decision. Okay. But what I typically do, and again, this is your own preference, but when I go to interview, I already have my thank you card in my portfolio and I hand it off to the secretary as I'm walking out. Not every position has a secretary. Okay. So you do it according to the position you're applying for. But I don't throw it in the mail only because it's gotten so slow. I have no idea when it'll get to them. And I want to get that thank you in their hands as soon as possible. Okay. So Sheila, we got time for one more question.
Okay, there was one. Okay, so someone says, I have often been asked, would you accept this position if it was offered to you? Given the situation, I may have a higher priority interview I'm waiting on. What is a tactful response to this?
You always say yes. Okay. It's not that you're lying. Um, you're going to accept every position if it's offered to you, but how can you accept it unless it's offered? So what I mean by that is you're ideally your greatest problem could be you have 5 jobs to pick from. They've all offered you jobs. Okay. Obviously, you're going to take the one that you enjoy the most and the one that pays the most. But a lot of times you're not going to know that until you accept the position. No, I've had people who they've accepted a position, worked there 2 weeks, the other job came to the table and offered it to them, more money, better benefits. They'll call me up and they'll say, Gloria, I feel really bad because I've only been in this position for 2 weeks. You know, you have every right. We still live in a free country here where you can work where you want to work. Okay. So you have every right to, even though you worked at that job for 2 weeks, you want to go and improve yourself. You just tell them when you're putting in your notice that I'm making a career improvement. You know, I really enjoyed working for you guys, but I've got such a better offer, I can't turn it down. Okay. So having said that, you guys can look for tomorrow afternoon. You will be getting a copy of the PowerPoint that we did today, the talking notes. If we come across the questions in the chat that Sheila and I were not able to answer, we will be answering them when we send out the email. In that email too, we'll have our contact information. So if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. I also send you a copy of all the career force locations and phone numbers in the state of Minnesota. So no matter where you're located in the state, you're going to be able to have a career force that's fairly close to you. In that career force, we have all kinds of resources for you. So we want to encourage you to reach out to us. We can be your job counselor. We can help you possibly with getting some tools. We can help you with recognizing your skills, mock interviewing, upgrading your resume. We also want to remind you we've got all these great workshops coming up. So register as quickly as you can. We can only take so many people, so you want to make sure you get in there. So blessings to you, and let us know if you need anything when you're going after the job interview to get that job. Thank you, everyone.